The moment Eleanor stepped into the quiet hospital room, a strange emptiness spread through her chest, thick and suffocating, the kind that steals your breath before you realize you're breaking. Michael lay there, still as a photograph. The man she once loved, no, the man she still loved, staring blankly at the ceiling as though the world had turned into something unfamiliar. She had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways, but not like this. Not with his eyes passing right over her as if she were a stranger. Not with the man who once memorized the rhythm of her heartbeat, now unable to recall her name. The shock hit her with a force she couldn't understand. Because it wasn't only that he had forgotten their memories, he had forgotten her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Eleanor stood by the door, fingers trembling as she gripped the bouquet of lilies she used to bring him every Sunday morning when their world was still whole. She remembered how he used to tease her for choosing lilies instead of roses, saying lilies reminded him of quiet mornings after rain, gentle, pure, and full of hope. But today, they felt like silent witnesses to a life that had shattered overnight. The doctor had prepared her for the possibility, warning her that the accident had left Michael with memory loss. But nothing could have truly prepared her for the hollow expression on his face as he failed to recognize the woman who once held him through all his storms. She approached his bedside slowly, her legs stiff, heart thundering with fear and longing. She wanted to speak his name, but it caught in her throat. She studied his face, still marked by faint bruises, and tried to find some sign, some spark, that the man she knew still lived inside him. But all she found was distance, a distance she didn't know how to cross. Days passed like blurred pages turning in a book she didn't want to read. She visited him every day, bringing small pieces of their shared past, photos, letters, little gifts they had exchanged over the years, in the desperate hope that something would break through the fog of his memory. Sometimes he would stare at a photo for a long time, his brow furrowed with the faintest hint of recognition. But then he would simply shake his head, lost. Eleanor kept her composure in front of him, but every time she stepped out of the room, she felt the weight of 1,000 forgotten moments pressing against her heart. One rainy afternoon, she brought him the old leather journal he used to write in every night. It contained his dreams, his insecurities, his promises, and, more importantly, the reflections of their years together. She knew she was risking reopening her own wounds, but she hoped that somehow his own words could bring him back to her. When she placed the journal in his hands, he held it with a mix of curiosity and caution, flipping through the pages slowly. She watched his fingers trace the ink the way his fingers once traced her skin. He paused at a page that had been bookmarked years ago. A page filled with a confession he had written about how he fell in love with Eleanor the moment she laughed at his clumsy introduction in a crowded cafe. He didn't recognize the handwriting as his own, and yet a strange softness filled his eyes, as though his heart was whispering to him something his mind couldn't understand. He began reading the journal every day. Though he didn't remember writing the words, the emotions behind them stirred something within him. He told the nurses that the journal brought him comfort, that it felt familiar in a way he couldn't explain. Eleanor noticed that he had started watching her more closely during her visits, as if trying to match the stories on the pages with the woman standing before him. He still didn't know her, but he didn't look through her anymore. He looked at her, deeply, curiously, with a quiet longing that made her breath catch in her chest. One afternoon, he asked her to tell him a story. Not just any story. One about them. So she did. She told him about the first time they danced in her kitchen, the radio playing softly as they swayed between laughter and burnt pasta. She told him about the winter night they got trapped in a snowstorm and ended up sleeping in the car, talking about everything and nothing until sunrise. She told him about his habit of touching her shoulder every time he walked past her, a silent gesture of affection he never noticed but she always felt. She told him how he used to kiss her forehead before every goodbye, and how he would whisper her name like it was a prayer. As she spoke, he closed his eyes as if trying to absorb every word into the empty spaces where memories used to live. When she finished, he whispered that he wished he could remember all of it. Eleanor felt a tear slip down her cheek, but she forced a smile, telling him it was okay. But inside, she wondered how long she could endure loving a man who no longer remembered loving her. Weeks became months. Michael slowly improved physically, but his memories remained lost. Eleanor wondered if this was her new reality, a life built around echoes of what once was. Yet she stayed, not out of obligation, but out of the belief that love didn't end simply because one person could no longer recall it. She taught herself to find beauty in the small progress he made. The way he relaxed when she walked into the room, the way he laughed at her old stories even if they felt new to him, the way he seemed at peace when she sat by his side. She didn't ask for more, even though her heart desperately wanted it. One spring morning, something unexpected happened. As she entered his room, carrying fresh lilies, she found him standing by the window, staring outside with a thoughtful expression. When he turned toward her, there was a gentleness in his eyes she hadn't seen in months. He greeted her by name, not because he remembered it, but because he had memorized it anew. He asked if she wanted to walk with him in the hospital garden. She agreed, trying her best to hide the trembling excitement in her chest. They walked slowly between the blooming flowers, the sunlight filtering through the branches above them, casting soft patterns on the ground. They talked about simple things, the weather, the colors of the flowers, the funny nurse who always hummed while working. But there was something different about him that day. He kept glancing at her, not with confusion, but with a gentle admiration, the kind he used to show before the accident. As they reached a quiet bench, he sat down and looked at her with a seriousness she didn't expect. He told her that he had been having dreams that felt more like memories, though he couldn't fully grasp them. Dreams of laughter, of warmth, of a woman who felt like home. Eleanor's heart raced. He said he didn't know if the dreams were fragments of the past or simply illusions created by the journal and her stories. But he felt something undeniable, something pulling him toward her, something familiar. He confessed that he didn't remember loving her, but he felt like he should. Eleanor felt her breath catch. She told him softly that memories didn't define love. Connection did. And the connection they once shared wasn't completely lost, just hidden behind the fog of forgetting. Days after that conversation, he began rebuilding his life, piece by piece. He asked her to tell him stories again, not to restore what was gone, but to build something new on the foundation of what once was. Sometimes, he would hold her hand during their conversations, as if seeking reassurance that he wasn't wandering through the darkness alone. She held his hand back every time, silently promising she wouldn't let go. His recovery was slow, but the bond between them grew stronger. It wasn't a recreation of their old love, but the birth of a new one, gentler, more intentional, and built with the awareness that every moment was precious. Eleanor found herself falling in love with him all over again, not because he remembered her, but because he chose her despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. One evening, after months of steady progress, he asked her a question that sent a tremor through her entire being. He asked her why she stayed, why she didn't walk away when everything became difficult. She looked into his eyes, the same eyes that once held an entire universe of memories, And she told him the truth. She stayed because love wasn't something you abandon when it becomes fragile. Love was something you protect, nurture, and fight for, even when the world tried to erase it. Michael reached for her hand, holding it with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. He told her he still didn't remember everything, but he remembered the feeling of being safe with her, the feeling of being whole. He told her that maybe his mind had forgotten, but his heart never did. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life. Before you go, comment below. Do you believe the heart can remember what the mind forgets? Eleanor looked at Michael, the man she had loved in 2 lifetimes. One remembered, one rediscovered, and realized something profound. Love wasn't defined by memories. It was defined by presence, by loyalty, by choosing someone even when the path ahead was unclear. And as they sat together, the sun setting behind them, Eleanor knew that even though Michael had forgotten their past, they were building a new future, one that was just as beautiful, just as real, and just as deeply theirs.